Great. So today we're going to be talking about having a face locally. And just as a quick reminder,
you're on mute.
Oh, no way. I don't appear to.
No, Aaron, you're not on mute.
Can you hear me, Jess? Can everyone hear me? Fantastic. So we're talking about having a face locally. Charlotte, are we good with the slides? Are you still fiddling?
All good.
Try and make it work.
Good to go.
Good, perfect. So we crack on then. So we're just going to run through some quick reminders we do at the start of everything. Really excited today to be able to introduce a couple of new members to the team as well. So obviously we've got myself and Charlotte and Bethan, but we now, having joined the team, we've got Karen.
Hi all.
There we go. There's Karen from Camel, and we've got Shazad as well joining us in Nelson.
Hi, afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, Shazad. Yeah, so great. They're going to be working with us locally as innovation officers, much like Bethan has been doing for the last 6 weeks or so. So just as a reminder, our discovery aim is to engage and understand the strengths and needs of communities in high risk, low resource places. And we are, just to, again, as a reminder, it's a conversation. So any chance or any thoughts, reflections you have on the way through this talk, do pop them down in the chat and I'll be able to respond when Charlotte's talking. As I said, today we're going to be talking about having a face locally. We spoke last week around some event happened in Neath, but today we're going to be talking about an event happened in Camborne actually last night and what actually transpired. And just as a reminder, before we get any further, Charlotte, just for people that don't know, was an ER volunteer for a year and still is an active ER volunteer for the organisation, as well as being a service designer in our team. But I'll hand over to Charlotte now to explain what we're going to talk about today.
Cool, thanks, Erin. So just to kind of give a little bit of outline of what happened last night, because it was a bit of a U-turn on our show and tell, because we thought what happened was something that we really wanted to share with you all today. So in terms of our outreach in Camborne, in comparison to Neath, where Bethan was last week, Karen, as you just heard, is very new to the team. So most of our outreach has been done directly to people and organisations. The only public-facing outreach we've been doing is through 2 Facebook posts, which look very similar to the one you see on the screen now. And this is what we use to kind of help recruit some more participants that maybe we wouldn't have access to in other ways. So it's all about asking how people of the town could maybe help us in understanding their community better. So, but what happened last night was really interesting. So just to let you know up front, I've changed the name of the individual to Jackie as an alias to protect their identity. So they reached out to me on Facebook and said, I've seen your post on Facebook that you work for the British Red Cross. I need help. I don't have any food. It was 5:30, so we're running after the working day. And my first point of call, after understanding a little bit more about what she's got, her challenges are, was to reach out to a lot of the local teams that we've been working with and understand who can help her in this time. I also tried our support line as well, but the problem is that past 6 p.m, any support line, whether that's the local one and also our own, they're all closed. So the thing is we're maybe thinking, is this the first day that Jackie's not had any food? No, it's not at all. This is actually, Jackie has been without food for a number of days now. So it was really imperative that we got her food tonight. I'm really pleased to let you know that really excitingly, we managed to work with the duty manager in Cornwall to help us get some of our emergency response volunteers to deliver a food package to Jackie to make sure she was able to have a meal tonight. But the thing is this all sounds like a very simple story, but there's a lot more to it, and it really relates exactly back to what we were talking about last week and the lessons we've heard in a slightly different jest, but the point is very, very similar, because the thing is that Jackie reached out to a human being. There's only a very small bit of outreach that we've done. It was 2 simple Facebook posts, and none of it recommended that we were able to offer support locally, what we were able to achieve, or anything like that. And last week, we talked about the fact that people go to people they know and trust in an emergency. So Jackie doesn't know me. She doesn't have a reason to trust me apart from our name as an organization. And I'm really grateful that in this instance that our brand was able to provide Jackie with that security, that she felt like she was able to reach out and know that the Red Cross support was behind her. But as I said, they reached out to a human being, not a support line, not a service, not any other thing. And it could be really easy for Jackie to have seen our posts, seen our brand name and thought, the Red Cross might be able to help. Let me Google Red Cross support Camborne. Help me Red Cross locally Camborne. She didn't do any of that. She reached out directly to me. And when we spoke to her on the phone, she expressed that a phone line was something that she didn't feel comfortable reaching out to anyway, because being able to hear a human being and see me at the end of the phone on a video call was something that she really was able to open up to and ask for support in that way. And it's when someone is that lonely, I think we need to acknowledge, and we mentioned this yesterday, not just in the work that we've seen with Bethan locally, but also we've seen this in the support line in Grenfell, as I mentioned last week, that people don't always go to maybe what we expect is like the logical step in a crisis. They don't Google the way that maybe you would if you were not in a crisis state or any other thing like that. So what happened last night and what allowed us to understand more about what was like how Jackie was able to reach out for support? Was it that face that we added, that knowing there's a face behind the name of the Red Cross that made it accessible for her to reach out and feel like she could actually speak to someone, know who that person was, know it was Charlotte at the end of the phone, not simply an unknown quantity as someone answered the phone? There's an element here that's also about like the speed and the direct access. So as someone who may have, from having multiple complex conditions, has maybe been stuck in referral loops previously. And in this instance, she saw an organization and she saw a human being. And she thought, this is someone I know that I can directly go to get a direct answer from. It's also faster because maybe the time to take to reach out and Google and search and look and hunt for the right channel, it's not there. A person is. There's a question here around, is having a local presence raising expectations, or is it actually just providing an access point to people in crisis? Because I know some of the questions last week and some of the things we've been exploring are around the fact that there's a nervousness around moving away from systems and towards people, and what maybe the risks of that are if that person were to leave the organization. But frankly, what's the risk if we don't? What's the risk if we don't have a face or have an access point that people like Jackie are able to reach out to in their time of need? So quick note, Bethan had a blog out this week and Erin's going to put that in the chat as well. But does anyone have any thoughts or questions so far?
I was just going to say it's really interesting seeing the research starting to crisp up into some quite firm thing, and actually have some both with Bethan being contacted during the sort of flooding in Neath the other week and this thing last night, there's kind of like real life experiments around like these things, and like any good research, it's like it seems to be saying something quite obvious but that we're not doing, and it seems really I think it's super interesting, and it seems quite actionable what's coming out. And I really like that you're thinking about why would we be nervous as an organization to move towards a kind of more like individual face at a local level for our services.
Thanks, Harry. And I think that is something that we're really feeling like, if in both of these instances we wouldn't have these insights if we hadn't been there locally. So by having Bethan locally able to communicate with, that's why people last week went to Bethan about the flooding situation. And this week, if we hadn't have just put that simple post on Facebook, that still wouldn't have been that call, and maybe Jackie would have gone hungry last night. So there's a number of things that we've been able to experience purely just by being in the town locally.
Yeah, and something else just on that, Charlotte, as well. We interviewed a street priest actually from Nelson Shazad's area this week as well. Matthew Kiddick came out with us, but it links in with the insights that he was giving us around as well, having that face and personal relationship into those conversations. It's really powerful seeing it from both ways this week.
Isn't one of the challenges, though, that systems have an advantage to an extent, and they can be more centrally based, and people can reach out to those to get some form of support. But if we are trying to move to a local face, it's very difficult to maintain that, and to have a face in all the places you need to have. So how do we sort of counter those two kind of extremes, really?
So I think that's why we kind of mentioned that question about risk. It's something for us to really explore. because it's clear that people do go to the people, and as you say, that we have systems in place which mitigate a number of risks, as you just mentioned. But what are the risks of not doing it? So that's something we need to explore as a team to understand which one outweighs which, so that we can understand as an organisation which way is best for us to go.
It's not always just about risks though, because there are costs involved to try and have a local presence as well.
Yes, Leslie. So I think one of the interesting things around that aspect of it, and as Charlotte said, this is a very early insight that we're just coming across. But I think we mentioned on here before, the French Red Cross have done something similar to the work we were looking at in terms of third places, and we had a meeting actually this week with Vincent, who ran that work, and it's similar to some of the things that have already started to be explored around volunteering and how we can make, for instance, volunteering locally, there's a more efficient service, and whether that means making it more informal, that also improves attraction rates from everything we're seeing at the moment as well. So I think there are lots of questions to explore around this, and you're right, there are costs involved. But I think, as Charlotte was pointing to, and I think as our work is continuing to show us at the moment, that local presence really is necessary for us to be a relevant organisation to these people that need support out there at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Shazad here. I was just thinking, so there's something about our brand and the word trust associated with it, and then getting the required empathy. But also, I live in Nelson, and there is multiple dimensions to poverty and access to those services. So what you traditionally used to see people accessing those services is totally and utterly changed. So there's something how a lot of the new generation of people who've now ended up during this last 12 months in poverty and some of those difficulties, how they look at British Red Cross, and they maybe see it in a totally different light, that they will get that trust and they'll get that empathy and they'll get a response, where some of the others, they know perfectly well that they have a very short time scale in terms of opening and closing, where we could be seen as much more of almost that fifth, sixth emergency, our light is always on kind of thing. So there's something to consider, that how people would perceive us. So then there's to mitigate the risk, there's something about how do we collaborate with others and kind of influence some of those thinking.
Thanks for that, Shazad. Thank you, guys. I'm